Name. The board will not debate the matters of a proposed bylaw with individual citizens, but members may ask questions of you following your presentation. The main function of this public hearing is to listen to your views. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making their views heard. Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 2826 will rezone 920 and 934 Harwood Drive in Blue River from R1 Residential Single and Duplex Zone to C4 Recreational Commercial to allow traveler accommodation use, short-term guest accommodation in a single-family dwelling for Mike Wigley Heliski Resort. Mr. Corporate Officer, are there any written submissions?
Thank you, Chair. There was a single written submission received in the time, and that was republished in your agenda from Trans Mountain.
Thank you very much. Are there any in-person submissions? Anyone here to speak to this item? Is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak to this? No? Is there anyone in the gallery who wishes?
Hello, yeah, my name is Matisse Vejko. I'm on the part of the proponent, the Mike Wiggins helicopter scheme. So I just wanted to introduce myself, and we also have our general manager, Elias Ottner, on the Zoom call. So we should be able to answer any questions that may come up.
Thank you very much. And I believe there is someone in the gallery. Yes. Certainly.
Thank you. As most of you know, my name is Stephen Quinn. I'm a Blue River resident, and I will state up front, I have no direct interest in whether this property is zoned or not. However, having had a large and extensive experience with this piece of property, I want to categorically state that I am in support of it. I do have one concern. There's a helipad has been built on that property. It is right across from the beach. That helipad was licensed through Transport Canada regulations. Those regulations and their processes do not allow a wide public interest. The beach is right across, and as all of you were there this summer, you know that that's a small lake with a beach. When Transport Canada does their processes, they also look at approaches to that helipad from various areas, as perhaps Director Merlin might know from Clearwater. They have tried a helipad for a long time. But I really just want it on the public record that I think that use of that helipad, and I know that you can't do anything about it, should be restricted to use in the winter for heli skiing and not flying over the beach when all the kids in that are playing. And that's just like, I'd like that comment on the public record. And if anyone wants to answer questions, I'm here.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Seeing no hands raised either here or on Zoom, I will call a second time for submissions. I will call a third and final time for submissions. Oh, Director Stamer?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. This is a question that's sort of in the same realm of ongoing development in Blue River is, and as Mr. Quinn had alluded to about the helipad, will there be any impact going forward with this piece of property with the proposed ski hill?
I will try to answer that question. So I'll just backtrack to the concerns about the use in summer and helicopters flying. So at this point, there is no projected summer use for that property, or if there will be very casual. There's no projected plans to use helicopters in the summer at that property. During the winter, the flight path to that landing pad proceeds from the north side of the lake across the privately owned property that's owned by the resort right now. So appreciate the concerns, but I don't think that should impact the use of the beach in summer in any way.
Thank you. Are there any other submissions? There being no further speakers, I declare this public hearing closed. All right, I call to order this meeting of the Thompson-Nicola Regional District for Thursday, December 14th, 2023. The TNRD acknowledges that we connect with many First Nations across our vast regional district and today are situated on Kamloops to Secwepemc territory, situated within the unceded ancestral lands of the Secwepemc Nation. The TNRD appreciates the partnership that we have with Kamloops to Secwepemc and respect the territory and land on which we gather today. All right, welcome today to alternate Director Beppel, who is here in place of Director Hamer Jackson. The TNRD is saddened to announce the loss of staff member Al Nordic, who passed away suddenly on Monday. Al worked in the Utility Services Department on a casual basis after retiring from a long career with the City of Kamloops in their utility department. Al was a very valuable member of our team, always willing to help out where and when he was needed. And our sincere condolences to his large family and to the many friends he leaves behind. The Thompson-Nicola Regional Library is hosting its 4th writer in residence, Jennifer Krumka, her grand finale tonight at the downtown library, 4 floors down from us, beginning at 6 o'clock this evening. The event will feature patrons and workshop participants reading from recent works. Award-winning journalist, creative writer, and instructor, Ms. Krumka has mentored seasoned writers and emergent talent from across the regional district this fall through workshops and through one-on-one consultations. At 12:30 tomorrow, after the Committee of the Whole meeting, long service awards will be given to our employees who have reached 5, 10, 15, 20, and 30-year anniversaries this past year. A pizza lunch will follow the presentation, and you are all cordially invited to attend. Upcoming meetings and events. I'm going to take a deep breath, sharpen your pencils, get ready. A lot of writing. Friday, December 15th, tomorrow, 9 a.m., Committee of the Whole. December 15th, 12:30, long service awards followed by pizza lunch. December 15th, tomorrow, 1:30 p.m., Hospital District Board meeting. Then it is Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. And we reconvene in the new year on Wednesday, January 17th at 10 a.m. for a board training session. Thursday, January the 18th at 9 a.m. for Electoral Area Directors Committee meeting. Thursday, January 18th at 1:30 for the regular board meeting. Friday, January 19th at 9 a.m. for a Committee of the Whole. And Friday, January 19th at 1:30 p.m. for Policy and Governance Committee. We're going to be spending a lot of time with each other. And that's great. She added hastily. Today in your blue folders, you have the 2024 mobile library schedule. You also have a very handsome 2024 TNRD Film Commission calendar. You all know this already, but it does showcase what a beautiful region we all live, work, and play in. You will also find a letter from the Lower Thompson Valley Tourism Society, which relates to an item that will come forward today under new business. There is an update from alternate Director Beppel on FCM Advocacy Days and the Disaster and Climate Risk and Resiliency Project, and there is regular mail. Are there any additions to or deletions from the agenda? We have a recommendation regarding the regular minutes from November 23rd.
So moved.
Director Stamer, thank you. Second by Vice Chair Smith. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none on the question, all those in favor, opposed if any, that is carried. We move on to bylaws from public hearings. 7.1, we do have a recommendation. Thank you very much, Director Onslow, second by Director Ranta. Any discussion, questions, comments? Director Rain?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I understood correctly, the heliport would not be used in the summer. Would it be used in the winter months? And I guess The question is whether or not we wish to add something about the use of the helipad.
I would find an answer. We don't have plans to use the helipad in summer at this point. No, it's primarily winter use. It will be used in winter. It will be used in conjunction with our regular heli-ski resort product.
I have Director Sau and then Director Stamer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the staff, is with regards to the concern by Mr. Quinn, is there anything in the terms of bylaw that we can incorporate in there that, we with Director Onslow's, I mean, just asking out of curiosity, if we can incorporate that to restrict it to winter use in terms of bylaw? Thank you.
Through the chair, so helicopter landing pads or anything aviation related is federal. And so no bylaws that we pass can restrict that. But you could pass perhaps a resolution encouraging Transport Canada or something to that effect. But we can't write that into this bylaw.
Thank you. That answer your question, Director Sau? Thank you. Director Stamer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just talking off camera with Director Rain. I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can set something up. Again, I mean, the world is paved on good intentions. And maybe we could have some way of, encouraging only for emergency use in the summertime. So I'm wondering if we can have that put in there.
Mr. Kraus?
Through the chair, the mechanism for that might be a restrictive covenant if the owner is willing to provide that. I think the board can ask for that and the owner would have to be willing to voluntarily provide that. That's certainly something you can ask for now. And if today's recommendation is for third reading, so it would have to go to the Ministry of Transportation for sign off. So in the meantime, the owner could provide that covenant and then the board could adopt the bylaw at that point when you've received the documentation. The question would be about the enforceability of that because it's kind of outside of our jurisdiction, but at least you would have something more than a verbal.
I have Director Getz and then Director Rain again.
Thank you, Chair. No expert on this, but I do believe that NAV Canada has certain rules and restrictions for helipads. And since this has been used in the past for that use, I still think it would fall under whatever happens unless they decide to decommission the helipad. It would still follow the same rules unless they decommission it. So I'm not sure that there's a lot that this board could do without going through NAV Canada.
Thank you, Director Rain.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the approval could be subject to the applicant agreeing that there would be no summer use. What I've heard from the applicant is saying they don't intend to do that. They give us a letter saying they're not going to use it in the summertime. Yeah, it's not enforceable, but it is their commitment not to use it. And so we could approve it just subject to.
Director Onslow, and then I have Director Bass.
I like the idea of Mike Quigley's helicopter resort providing us with a letter saying that they won't use it in the summer, just in case there is other tourism opportunities that present themselves even 15 years down the road, so that we don't have helicopters going over Eleanor Lake during the summer when people are on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Bass.
Just a governance question. Aren't we just discussing a rezoning here? And now the conversation's gone into some other area. I mean, isn't the issue that before us right now simply a rezoning of a property? So I guess I mean Mr. Lois to explain if we should be talking about a covenant when we're just talking about rezoning a building.
Through the chair to Director Bass, thank you for that. Yes, what's currently before you is, as Mr. Kraus has indicated, third reading on a rezoning application. And the bylaw in question, it's a single clause bylaw, which would rezone a single spot from residential, single and duplex to recreational commercial. So at this point, what you are considering is third reading of that zoning bylaw. So it is not up for adoption at this point. And also, as Mr. Kraus has correctly observed, this this local government never has any jurisdiction over aviation matters in any event.
Director Stamer.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. And as to add to what Director Bass is asking is that this is a totally different use on that piece of property. I mean, it was a private residence with the owner of the ski hill, and now we're changing that it could basically have people coming every single day of the week for the rest of the year if they wanted to, or if they wanted to change it that way. So it totally changes the traffic levels and everything else, whether it's going to be used in the summer or not. They still have the flexibility to be able to change that. And I don't think we don't necessarily need Sylvester Stallone to come flying over everybody on a Tuesday just because he could land in the heliport instead of going down the street where everybody else lands. So that's part of the issue when you've got rezoning applications. I think we should be pretty frank on what they can be used for and what they shouldn't be used for.
So right now, we are considering the motion, the recommendation as you see in your agenda. Does anyone wish to propose any amendments to this? Director Rain?
I'm just wondering if we could hear from the applicant, would they be prepared to issue a letter saying that they have no plans to use the helipad during the summer months? If so, I'd be prepared to make an amendment.
Thank you.
I'm not able to make that decision, but we can definitely, that's something we would consider, yes. But it would have to be approved by our chief executive.
Director Rain?
Yeah, I would move the motion subject to receipt of a letter from the applicant acknowledging that there's no intended helipad use during the summer months.
I'll second that.
All right, so we are discussing the amendment. Is there any discussion, question, comment on the amendment? Alternate Director Beppel?
So where does the decision lie, if we don't get that assurance? Like, do we have to come back to another public hearing? Or, what is does it just stop being a decision?
Corporate Officer Lois?
So my understanding is that the amendment you are currently discussing is to, so that it would read to give third reading to this bylaw, subject to receiving a letter of intent not to use a helipad in the summer months. If you passed such an amendment, then the third reading would be given, subject to receiving that letter. And then if such a letter was not received, then third reading would presumably then be considered void because it had never been received, and therefore the bylaw could not be adopted. So at that point, I think we would need to discuss with the planning department if any new information was considered to be provided. If new information is available, then as a general rule, it's safe to have a new public hearing in order to ensure that public had the opportunity to comment on the new information. However, if no new information is provided, then another public hearing would not be needed, and it would simply be back to the board to decide if you wanted to give third reading without the letter, with the letter, an adoption at your choice.
Thank you, Director Middleton.
I think I agree with Director Bass on this one, that this is perhaps a little bit out of our wheelhouse, shall we say, or perhaps not in our lane for at this point in time. If we see the motion as amended and we reject that motion, not emotion, motion, do we go back to the original? So this doesn't take the original motion off the table.
This is an amendment to the original motion. If the amendment fails, then we are back to the recommendation as written in your agenda, and then that will be the subject of debate.
Thank you.
Any further question or comment on the amendment? All right, I will call the question. All those in favor of the amendment? All right, we have Directors Houghton, Hayward, Graham, alternate Director Beppel, Director Stamer, Director Rain, Director Onslow, Director Morris, and Director Sao. All those opposed to the amendment? Do we need a record of the names? All right, so we have Director Stanky, Hall, Vice Chair Smith, Chair Roden, Director Bass, Director Newstater, Director Laird, Director O'Connor, Director Middleton, Director Getz, Director Lepso, Director Blackwell. Director Thorpe. Director Grenier, were you opposed as well? Thank you. If you did not hear your name called, then I apologize. So the amendment is by my count defeated. Thank you. We are back to the original recommendation, which is that zoning amendment bylaw number 2826/2023 be read a third time. Do we have any further questions or comments? I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Thank you. That is carried. All right, we move on to delegations and invited presentations. Our first delegation is from, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Timacook Good Earth Recycling Waste Management Facility. And I see we have Rose Marie Rocca online, and all right, and you're presenting here in
in regards to this reception.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. The floor is yours, and Ms. Rocca online.
Thank you.
Now, we did have a slide presentation on PowerPoint. Is that going to be put up that we submitted? Look at that. Nice. All right. First off, thank you very much for allowing us to come in here and kind of present again. I know this is the second time that this presentation was kind of set out, but this one's really set out to address some of the concerns that came in from the last month's meeting that we weren't able to attend because we weren't scheduled for that delegation. We're scheduled for this month. So in regards to that, you had the name just so close, Timacook Good Earth Recycling Waste Facility. And this is a composting facility set out to produce organic soil for sale. That's all it is. It's a composting facility. It is not a waste management in the sense that it's not a garbage. It's only composting material. So if we can move to the next slide. Oh, okay. That one? All right. Ooh, got the power. All right. Okay, I've already done the introduction. So basically the proposed site is on Bonaparte First Nations traditional territory. We'll get through that. The Timacook facility, I've indicated that it's a composting site for recycling and producing composted soil. And then we'll just go through the Timacook values. And then hopefully it'll give you guys a better understanding of what we're looking at. So Bonaparte First Nations, our business partner is Ian Brown on that portion of the land that we're looking to lease out. It's a solid waste, we're using a solid waste consultant, which is Deacon Liddy and Rosemary Rocca, who's online. And this is, I believe this last year's photos in regards to when we started this venture. So the proposed facility is on traditional Bonaparte First Nation land and original reserve land, as you can see right there. So the little star is kind of where Cache Creek is, and it's basically the location of what we're looking at. As you can see, it's well within the traditional territories, and that's one of the reasons why we've looked at it, is because it kind of brings back some of the benefits for the First Nation, and it's also in line with the elders and the nations wanting to get into the business where it's beneficial to Mother Earth. So one of the biggest directions that we get from the community is do business, but do business that doesn't impact the earth. And this is why we're quite invested in this program, because it's one of the ones that will bring a significant income to the regional area. Also, it's in line with the First Nations values. So we're just gonna move on. it's an area that is historically and currently used for waste management. That's one of the reasons why we picked it, so that all the topography and everything is already in line. Many of the concerns that were addressed initially from the previous historical site, it makes it a perfect opportunity to do the same thing, a little bit better, and we've moved it to an area where the topography is much more beneficial to the actual composting cycle. It's near the Campbell Hill landfill, so we believe that all those items that are addressed with the Campbell Hill in regards to their location would already been addressed because we're right basically across the street. And it's also near the former TNRD recycling depot. As you can see, the location is basically in line with anything to do with waste disposal, composting. It's already there, but the only difference is at this point is, again, we're doing business to produce composting soil. Organic material in all the surrounding areas has been increasing because of the population increase. So we feel it's a good business decision to get into that business only because it's only growing. Like we all know Vancouver's sending out all their stuff down south. You've got Kamloops here that's recently just put in their recycling. We know where the business is gonna be. It's gonna be wherever this facility is. And we're close. We're in a pinnacle area. And it's like I said before, here it is. Look at that. Huh? This is the site we're looking at. That site right there in yellow. I saw this and I'm like, wow, what a nice presentation. I get to say that. Look at this. This is the area that we're looking at right now. All right, I'm gonna move on here. I know it's gonna move in, but we only got 10 minutes. Okay, it's one of the benefits. It's Bonaparte First Nation owned. The regional area is looking for new recycling waste management. We've been in discussion with Vancouver, we've been discussing Cache Creek. We're also, just so you see the broad scope of this, we're in discussions with our sister nations. So our sister nations is also just as concerned as we are. So we're trying to pull together our resources so that we're moving in a direction that's beneficial, not only for our community, for the regional community, but also the sister nations across the board. We're very close to finalizing a benefits agreement with many of them. So in hopes that they'll get on board with this, because this recycling center is going to employ about 20 plus individuals, probably 4 or 5 high-tech individuals who we've already sent for schooling. The initial starts in PG and they just finished actually yesterday and they told me they're on their way back. So we're already down that process to find the right items where it's zero waste net zero waste. And that's what we're pretty well looking at. Recovery of organics, creating compost and potting soil, specifically in the Cache Creek area. As you guys all know, it's an arid area. So let's face it, many of the proponents out there or potential customers is going to be about how do they get their soil better? And if we're already producing that, that's where basically where the income is going to come from. All right. Only municipal solid waste, no hazardous material. I'll tell you that was the one big thing that the community has said, no hazardous material. Commercial customers, long-term capacity of 30 years is what we're looking at. The landfill footprint is 31 hectares, average tonnage is 50, maximum tonnage is 190. There were some questions before on regards to whether an EA was requested or required. We're below that requirement, as we had told EAO office. And the reason why we're below it, because our expectation for average tonnage, as you guys know in business, you got to ramp up. So within maybe 5 to 7 years, we'll be at the 50. It's not, even though you have a maximum tonnage and you're looking at requirements for that 190,000, you're looking at downstream growth for that recycling center prior to it. So it looks like we're looking at 190, but to get 190 guys, we're gonna have to have everybody, right? It's everybody's business. So I don't think that that's too much of an issue at this point, but we are making sure that we're under the requirement so that there's no question involved.
And Roy, may I add that the trigger is 250,000 tonnage per year. So even at the max capacity, we aren't meeting that particular trigger.
And you might want to go into this then, Rose.
Sure, no problem. Along the lines of that thought about the EA, we do want to share with everyone that TMIC is including environmental protection, social and cultural assessments within the facility process. So these components are similar to an EA under the ministry waste authorization process. So for example, we are incorporating environmental protection into its design. So currently in BC, a single liner system is the requirement, but TMIC is going above and beyond that. They're exceeding ministry expectations by incorporating a double liner system, which obviously doubles the environmental protection. And there's only a handful of landfills across the province that are doing that, including TMIC. Additionally, this year, Bonaparte First Nation completed an archaeology assessment on the property in question. Our biologists came to site and also completed a baseline habitat assessment, and we started assessing the groundwater and surface water quality in the area in 2022, and that'll continue into at least 2024. Thank you. And that summarizes that the TMIC, or provides an overview that the TMIC facility is meeting and exceeding ministry requirements. In terms of the TNRD, they are also aligned with the solid waste management program objectives and goals as shown on this slide. I won't go through all of them, but a few. Of course, we're going to promote the first 3 R's within our recycling and composting facilities. So reduce, reuse, and recycle. We're preventing organics and recyclables from entering the waste stream, so having that strong diversion target. And of course, the site or the facility itself wouldn't even be an option without the collaboration across partnerships that we're seeing today. Where I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything on that slide.
Oh, you did a great job there. We'll just move forward. Local economy. Over the last little while, Cache Creek has been in the news. Over the number of years, 5 of the last 8 years, we've been flooded out. The economy there is stagnant, of course, because it's always on a rebuild program. One of the big things that we know is economic projects moves us to local staffing and then housing development. That's usually the normal scheme of things. So Cache Creek, anybody that lives in Cache Creek knows that the housing there's zero availability. For us to be able to grow the community in Bonaparte and the surrounding regions and our sister nations, we have to build an economy there. So this is one of the ones that the recycling center is able to do. It's able to not only facilitate local work availability, what it leads us to do, and Cook Me Frank will make that statement, is he's now, it forces us to move to the next step, which is looking at local housing developments, because we have to be able to bring back many of our displaced members from the reserves that want to come back home, but there is no place to live. So those are one of the things. It's all tied in. It's not just the economy. It's the housing. It's bringing people back and increasing the population back to what it used to be in Cache Creek. As you all know, if you go to Cache Creek, you try to go to a restaurant, half of the times it's closed because they don't have staffing, right? Because there is no labor pool in that area. And this is one of the projects that we're looking at. And a perfect example is, for those of you who know that the bridge that they're building in Cache Creek, that always washes out, this picture right here. Well, Bonaparte First Nation and their partner was just announced last week that we won that bid. Like, that is tremendous. One of the larger programs that Bonaparte has ever been involved in. And this is the direction that we want to go. We want to develop the community and make sure that it's sustainable. The downstream impact to just the bridge project and the recycling to that community, that the monies it's gonna bring into the area is tremendous. And I know that I've been speaking with many of the business owners, like, they just need traffic, and traffic only comes when there's business opportunities. And this is what we're talking about. You know what, capital, we just kind of went on that. There's the downstream impact, increased regional capital through waste importation levy payable at all out of region waste, provides a one-time disposal option to commercial customers. It just goes on and on, the benefits of this. Creates the avenue for funding opportunities. Again, when First Nations is involved with projects like this, let me tell you, when we went to FLNG meeting a few months ago, the ministry was so excited that we're looking at projects that are green. And they are well receiving in regards to what we want to do in the future in regards to this community. We talked about the social housing, unification of Bonaparte First Nation and community. That's not only just the Cache Creek, I'm talking about the sister nations across the board. We've been talking about this with our sister nations for a very long time. Any of the ones that we have issues with in regards to they have questions, it's a G to G meeting, so a government to government meeting. The nations will get together and kind of address those issues. 2 consulting processes required. In April, consultation began. In April 20, we tried starting a consultation, just so you guys know, but we stalled it. The reason why we stalled it is because we got the letter of concern from the EAO office. So the normal process is you address those letters, wait for the response, and then you kind of move forward because they outline your reasoning and what your next steps really are. Like I said, the province, many of the ministries know about this project. The Canadian federal government is helping provide some of the funding. Some of our sister nations there, it's like they're excited for us because they know that when we step forward like this, they have the opportunity to step forward with us. The province, again, we initially met with Cache Creek. I think there was a lunch meeting or whatnot right after the April 20th meeting that was held here. So I was told. And at that point, the gun club came up in regards to their issues. So we're looking to address all those items. But we don't feel that any of those items is really going to be, obviously, if the EAO office said no, then it's a little bit different. But we don't think that's going to actually happen because we're in compliance with them and we're in discussion with them just about weekly, just to make sure we're doing all the right things. And you can go on this, Rose.
Sure, no problem. So this slide just shows what our next steps are going to be in our 3 buckets here. So the province or the Ministry of BC, the TNRD, and the TMIC facility. So our next steps, like Roy said, we're waiting for the EAO to provide their decision. We also have applied to Crown Lands. We're waiting for their decision as well. And then from that point, we'll move back to the Ministry of Environment Waste Authorization and start working with that team as well. For the TNRD, we're hoping that support continues, and should that support continue, we'll form the PAAC. For TMIC, as Roy mentioned, we're going to comply with the EAO, Crown Lands, the ministry, any of the requirements that are needed. And once we do receive some more decisions in the future, we'll resubmit our pre-screening application and again start working with the TNRD to form that committee. Thank you.
And the last speaker here is going to be, I'll just announce our cook be Frank Antoine, also a known speaker across internationally in regards to not only First Nations environmental concerns, but First Nations economic development. So here you go. Okay, I can do that. Oops.
Guaita, Cookby, Prashwa, Cooks Quest, Schlickstaus, Swakabulu. Hello, everybody. My name is Chief Frank Alvin from the Bonaparte First Nation, or known as Schlickstaus, people of the low-lying valley. The reason I pull up this map is this is the map I work with, the same kind of map that you guys work with in your area. You guys are curious what this map looks like? To us, we call it a bear, Esqualax in our language. The head of the lake where the mouth is there, that's Bonaparte Lake. Just the other side of that is Young Lake. To that road you see going up to there, that's near Clinton. And there's Finney Lake just to the left, far, far left of that. And then there's Blue Earth at the bottom of that arrow. Highland Valley just at the corner. And right where the belly is there, that's just above that is Tonquah Lake. That is our traditional territory. That's what we've been claiming for the last millennium, I guess, thousands of years. It estimates to about 1,878 hectares, or 4,640 acres. This is where our people have lived for eons. And this is what we always want to be a part of and be a part of that traditional land. As you all know, you all work with First Nations in your areas. So I'm just giving you a little insight of where we're at and where we're from and why we're a part of this and why we're sitting up here today. I think the biggest part for me, when I see these type of maps and why we're doing, you heard of my group ahead of me, they're all the technical staff. This is the piece that you don't know of as Indigenous people. We share that territory too with other nations, other communities. And like he calls them sisters. We're starting to build an alliance and a coalition. I'm getting away from the ECDEV words because ECDEV is just about money. Economics is one thing, but when you call it indigenomics, it changes the facet, and that's what indigenomics is to us. It shows the value that we have there and what we do and why we do it is protect Mother Earth. When you put up your hand, there's the water, land, the animals, and the people. That's how we look at it. That's how we've followed ourselves over the years and all the generations that's followed that. When you flip it upside down, that's what you call climate change. People are trying to manipulate what we have. What we're trying to rectify and what we're trying to do is help Mother Earth by recycling. And you look beside what was beside us, that's not recycling. So you can't compare the two and add the two together because we're the opposite of that. And this is the reason why when I say economics, indigenomics, because it's the currency we have, and that was our currency I just explained to you. And when I look down at what we're trying to do today, we have to get on board and try to do something to do that. Sustainability, biodiversity, all of these fancy words that people use now to save Mother Earth. The only way you're going to do that is create that opportunity to give back. And that's why this recyclable plan is important to our people. It's a lot different than when we first had that landfill there, our people protested on that. And it was right in our traditional land. That didn't stop it. It kept moving forward. Now we want to do something better and bigger and share that opportunity with every community beside us. Anybody that wants to work with us, we want to work with them. It's not the only one that we've done. We've done into tourism in the same way. We open the doors to everybody. We share our land. Kanukhantwa, helping one another is important. And we continue to do that as First Nations people. We don't stop moving. We keep moving forward. But I could tell you what, the next generation that's behind me, the young people are here, they're going to be the next leaders. I'm just fortunate to be here to share my voice and my opportunity to be there. But when I look at what I look at and when I stare at our land every day when I go home, I was born and raised there. I hunted there. I gathered there. So that's important to us. It's important for our next generation, our elders. My mom, my dad. My dad's gone now, but my mom's still there. And this is something that they want to see is opportunity. And that's all we're creating now today is that opportunity for our people to work together. These little communities, especially rural communities, struggle with any kind of economy. And all we want to do is bring that economy to the area, local area, so that we can share that, so we can build it together and work together. So moving forward, I would really love to, thank you guys for listening to our presentation today and listening to our technical staff talk about what's value. Again, this is our value. And it's important that we don't forget that. We definitely don't forget that. And I could tell you it's been passed down and it will continue to be passed down to the next generations. Kuksjem.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Are there any questions or comments from directors? All right, Director Middleton, you can go first. And then I have Director Houghton and Director Stamer.
Thank you. This is just a simple one, at least I think it's simple. What does PAAC stand for when we say we're going to form that? I couldn't see anywhere back in the slide presentation that showed what the full name of that was.
Well, Rose, I think you should answer that.
You are trying my memory. I'm gonna pull it up because I can't remember exactly what the acronym is, but Jamie, I saw you sitting over there. Maybe you can recall, maybe your memory is better than mine. In the meantime, I'll look it up.
Yeah, I could jump in on that through the chair. It refers to, I believe the slide that we're talking about is referring to the TNRD Plan Advisory Committee that would be set up in response to if the TNRD board decided to move forward with the amendment process. our policy that this board adopted is that we'd set up a special committee that would deal with the amendment process and work through that process.
So C would stand for committee and we're not too sure about PAA.
Plan Amendment Advisory Committee.
All right, I have Director Houghton, then Directors Stamer, Onslow, and Thorpe.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks, folks, for coming in again. Just got a few concerns, probably from some residents and myself personally. Back in April, when you made a presentation to the Solid Waste Committee, you said you're going to meet with all the parties, including the Village of Cache Creek, the South Caribou Sports Association, the Blue Goose Cattle Company, which I believe have the least tenure on that piece of property as it stands today. And have you met with these and other interested groups? And have you obtained an agreement from them, or or have you given them compensation on maybe alternatives to your application or your site? And is all your product that's coming in, would that be household waste? There's no cattle waste of any kind, I don't think, would there be? Because that is all being utilized locally. And do you have, at this point, intent supply letters from your people that would be supplying with the products, so that you've got a source of this stuff to come? So just those things have come to mind. And is there an alternative piece of ground? Say if you couldn't come to terms with the people that I named here, is there an alternative piece of ground on your own said lands that we could locate that so you wouldn't disrupt the others if you can't come to terms? So those are just the concerns. Thank you.
So for the consultational piece, like I indicated, we've spoken with the Caribou Sportsmen's Association. My understanding was that there was discussions with Cache Creek. We kind of put hold on our consultation piece because we need, as soon as the letter of concerns came in, we need to get that addressed, and that's why we're kind of all waiting for the EAO office to provide us those results. In speaking with that office, we are expecting a response back by either next week or the first mid-January. That's kind of their time frame right now, because everybody's going to be going on Christmas holidays. As opposed to the other areas, do we have a secondary site? We don't have a secondary site planned. The reason why is, again, it's like I said in the beginning, is it's already a site that's been utilized in that form. And all the environmental testings and things like that is kind of in line with this line of business. And that's why that, if you notice, it's a small area that the landfill is there. All these other things that are there, there's a reason why it's there, and it's just basically it's because it's a good location. And the other portion of your consultation piece that you're talking about is, once we know where we're moving forward, then we have a set plan for all our consultations with all the individuals that you've named.
Thank you, Director Stamer.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I've got a couple questions, but I'll just ask one. Thanks for your presentation. First up, I'd like to ask Mr. Vieira, there was alluded to in the meeting about reduction in the permitting process and the levels of size. So can you remind us again what that was? I mean, there was in the permitting process, there was certain levels, and now have those levels changed in the actual amount that they're going to be producing at the beginning?
Rose, you want to explain that?
Well,
Yeah, but or Jamie, you're going to take it?
Sure. Just maybe through the chair, if I can get the clarification. Do you mean
Seemed to me that we had
from our end?
Well, the last meeting we had, there was a discrepancy in what was originally proposed in April and what the size was going to be, and then there was actually a proposal in the reduction of that. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, through the chair, I can't really speak to that, but I think it'd be best for the proponent to speak to any changes they made from the original plan to what they're presenting here today.
No problem. I can take your question. So originally our max tonnage was 240,000. And you saw in the presentation today that we reduced it to 190. Both 240 and 190 are below the EAO trigger of 250,000. So although the maximum tonnage has decreased, it still hasn't changed any process with the ministry. Does that provide the clarity that you're looking for?
Yeah, so supplemental, so what you're saying is that by reducing it from 250, there's no other regulatory changes in the process?
That's right. The reduction of that number hasn't changed the regulatory process.
Director Onslow.
Hi there, thank you. I'm just curious when, and it goes back to the consultation again. Thank you. It goes back to the consultation and the consultation process. And obviously we were presented to as a board from the Sportsman Association. And it seemed at that point that there was no agreement that was happening between the two groups. When and if this does get approved and there is that consultation, is that on the table of some form of compensation for this group if they were to obviously lose their access to the property?
I can answer it in a few different directions here. So if the lease runs out and a new leaseor comes in, right, or leasee, I should say, comes in, there's no format in liability to provide compensation. We did reach out to the Caribou Sportsman Association. We brought them to our office. Cookby, Frank Antoine there offered them an eagle's feather, which is a communication dialogue. It's peace. It's open communication. This is where we were at. We told them exactly where we were at and what certain areas that we can look at to help, to assist. We even offered certain costing. Unfortunately, 2 weeks later, we found out that at the same time, they were trying to get their lease renewed without our referrals, without the referral system. And for whatever reason, the Crown Office had extended it for 2 years. So obviously you can imagine a lease being extended without consultation to a community that's its traditional territory, what kind of fervor I got from the community and the elders. We had an opportunity to work with this group. And what I said to that group and to the ministry is this. Again, you did a deal behind our back. I'm not going to be here forever. Cookby Frank is not going to be here forever. But what we don't want is a relationship which didn't start off on a good foot after we brought them in and with open arms. We know we're going to get, there's a lot of compensation land coming down the road. We absolutely understand how difficult it is to relocate a gun club. It's absolutely impossible nowadays. And we knew we were the answer to that. But unfortunately, our communication and how it ended up left a very, very bad taste in the community's mind. And the one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to leave a legacy of a bad relationship when I'm gone that someone else has to deal with. Now, we've addressed it with our community again in hopes that their viewpoints might change, but that's really up to the elders at this point. So we've already applied for the lease. Our application is in. The condition that they put on there was a 2-year extension based on a firearms requirement of some kind, but that doesn't, see, the problem with that is it doesn't supersede the right of the First Nations having input. And that was the biggest issue. And if everybody came to the table up front, we do good business. We're not here to maneuver around people. We're here up front. We tell you exactly what we're doing. This is why the ministry, this new viewpoint, we have 5 new Cookbys in our region. Cookby Frank, Cookby Justin, you name them. They're all new Cookbys, new methodologies, wanting to do the right thing. No more banging on the table. No more throwing your Indigenous card out. Let's just do good business. So I try to do good business. I met with them twice. I had Cookby Frank meet with them, offer them a feather. That doesn't happen. For those of you who understand, that doesn't happen often. I think you had 5. Okay? And he offered the 4th one. You know how much of an insult that is to the community? That's horrendous. And so what I said to Cookby Frank is, I can't have you meet with them anymore. It's an impossibility. He's a leader of a nation. And this is what culture is about. So we're going to do good business. The question is, are you guys going to help us? And that's all it's really about. We're gonna follow all the regulations. Don't, like, the government's, you know, the government is so restrictive on this type of business. We have to jump through hoops, right? Just asking, imagine, we're just asking you guys, just put our name on there. That's the first step. The rest of the step is so difficult. We have to comply to all these things, and these guys will tell you. We don't have to prove it because the process proves it. And that's why we're invested in it, because we're invested with our relationship with many of your staff. I gotta congratulate them because they've taken all our calls. They've discussed all the issues. The EAO office, the ministry, the waste ministry, they're so helpful. You know why? Because we're trying to be fair. And that's what it's about. So that's again, thank you for that question, because, you know, I wasn't gonna say anything, but until it was asked. But thank you. That's where we're at with them.
I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Okay, I have Directors Thorpe, Beppel, Stamer, Ranta, and I just want to say that I must have been misinformed then, because I heard a somewhat different version of events than what you just related, so perhaps I was misinformed.
Well, and you know what? I can share you the memo I sent out to Crown acknowledging the situation. And one of the statements I made to them is, because of what they've done, it's their responsibility, theirs, to address the consequences and the backlash that we're going to get as a community now. Because it's going to look like we're just taking it, but we've been trying. But we've been very, very reserved in this communication because we're trying to be respectful. But I'm only speaking about it now because we want to move forward. And that's one of the questions that came up. Are you talking with all those other nations, all those proponents? Absolutely. And we will come to a resolution with them if they come to the table fairly. You know, when we talk about the sister nations, any other nations that's going to have an issue, we're going to use G to G. We don't need this process here. We're just going to go to and we'll address it. We have now for the last 3 items, I think, in the last 4 months. It's going fast. The only thing that we laugh about is like, wow, when we have to go through the process and we're trying to do the right thing, it's so difficult. So please help us move us forward. That's all I'm looking at.
Thank you. Director Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Sort of a twofold thing. There was a compost facility east of the Perry Ranch, between Perry Ranch and the Maccabee fossil site that came up to the TNRD a couple months ago. How do you see yourselves in comparison to this facility that is supposedly been before the board? And is this a potential competition for you? And secondly, I understand that the tonnage is below the requirement for an EAO. As stewards of the land, is this something that you are willing to voluntarily do, even though your maximum tonnage does fall below?
Okay, so I guess the answer to that is just because you're using stewards of the land, right? And you're saying that because you're stewards of the land, you should spend more money on a regulation that the government's already set down just because. That doesn't make sense to me. Now, secondly, the second question would be this other composting. My understanding for that one is that it was initially a mushroom farm, I believe, correct? And there was historical toxicity in the waters that Skeecherson had wanted. So that's completely different. And this is why that area isn't that great for that. It's absolutely not that great. It's in a low-lying valley. There's waterways there. And this is why we picked this location. So.
Supplemental? Sorry, quick one. I think it's more of a safer rather than sorry scenario, just because the government says that the maximum at 250, you have to do an EAO doesn't necessarily mean that the government is right, that maybe it should be 200.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very much a proponent of safer rather than sorry. And maybe to address that, I should tell you, I lived at the mouth of the Botany Valley where we did have a compost facility that came in under the regulations. And then to be blunt, it was very easy for them to then expand, and they didn't have to go through the EAO, is my understanding. And it was not a pleasant experience for the residents, and I wouldn't think that Bonaparte would want to be part of anything like that.
Yeah, so, you know, easy for them to expand, maybe they found gray areas, but nowadays, when everybody's eco-friendly, trying to get around that, impossibility. There's too many governing steps that allow items to be stopped. And that's the key factor here is like, you're right, you know what, the government maybe they're lax, maybe they don't know. But here's a good thing. If I concede to that, then you can concede that there was other EAs that were done already previously. Why can't we use those? Why put on expenses? Because the geography hasn't changed. Just a thought.
Roy, do you mind if I
Sure.
add something? I also just want to say that it is in the EAO's hands right now, and it is in their discretion. Should they decide that TMIC has to complete an EA, then that's their decision to make. The requirements, which are related to environment, culture, water quality, and so on, those requirements are in an EA process, yes, but they're also in the waste process. And we are going to comply. We're not going to not complete any of those assessments. As one of my earlier slides, we had demonstrated we're already completing baseline habitat assessments with biologists, groundwater and surface water assessments, and cultural assessments. And that process is very similar to an EAO process. It's just it's just under the waste side of things within the ministry. So it has a different name, but the aspects are all very similar. That's it
Thank
for me.
you. Alternate Director Beppel?
Thank you. Is it Mr. Liddy? You're Mr. Liddy?
No, I'm Roy Seriosa.
Okay, my apologies. Could you first clarify for me, is this site within the boundaries of Cache Creek? The
Yes.
village of Cache Creek?
Yes.
So in terms of what you would be looking for from the TNRD is more support because we don't have jurisdiction within the village. Is that what you're here for?
Rose, you want to go through the logistics there?
Sure, no problem.
I'll just ask Mr. Vieira to speak to that. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. Through the chair, I could just provide some clarity on that. So the regional district, through our solid waste management plan, has the authority to permit facilities, waste disposal facilities. So this would fall under that authority. Therefore, a solid waste management plan amendment would be required to permit a new facility as part of all the steps in the process for this to be permitted through the provincial avenue. The regional district board has that authority. And so this board adopted a process earlier this year that lays out all the steps of what a proponent must do and the role of the TNRD to go through a plan amendment process.
Okay, so the TNRD has that authority or it can have that authority?
It is a component, it has the authority, a new landfill facility, a new solid waste facility within the regional district cannot open without it being included in the regional district solid waste management plan.
Okay, and then on top of that, I don't know
On
what.
top of that, it
Cache
must
Creek-
meet provincial Ministry of
Provincial,
Environment
okay.
requirements, yeah.
Okay, and I guess the other question is, it's not the Bonaparte First Nation itself that is the proponent, it's a company which has two partners, one of which is the Bonaparte First Nation.
That's correct.
So it is TMIC, which is you're representing
That's correct.
TMIC, right?
You got it.
Okay, so it's within the boundaries of Cache Creek, but TNRD has a jurisdiction And at the same time, it's not the First Nations that is here as the proponent, it is a company called Timmec.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Director Stamer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a couple of quick ones. I know we've got a lot to do today, but I think there's a couple of questions I'd like answered. First up, maybe this is to Rose. Rose, how were the permits obtained to drill on the property for the groundwater testing? Was a mineral license used?
The permit to drill was under the mineral license process, correct? Because the facility is within the Timmec partnership, so one of the business partners there, Ian, his mineral claim and his mineral license. So that's correct. It went through the ministry in that avenue.
Thank you. And also, you mentioned earlier in your presentation about the long history of occupation on these lands. What did the ARC study find and what steps are in place to be able to continue on this proposal?
They didn't find anything of significance and they didn't suggest continuing with the more comprehensive archaeological study.
Thank you.
Director Ranto?
Thank you, Chair. My questions are based on the already agreed fact that the proposal is entirely contained within the village boundaries of the village of Cache Creek. This is the second time that you've been at the TNRD, once to the Regional Solid Waste Management Plan Committee, and now here today. And I must say that you appear to be fair down the road, having already applied to the provincial government for crown lease and everything else. And that, from our point of view, is on our property, within our boundaries. I recognize that it's the Bonaparte traditional territory. However, it's within the village boundaries. And at this point, we haven't had a single presentation, a single email, not a letter, basically nothing except a lunch meeting with me, and that was it over at Hotel 540. So you're already way down the road, and the village of Cache Creek has had no substantial or substantive discussion by the Bonaparte First Nations about the impact of what they're proposing within our boundaries. When is that going to happen?
Well, that step is after this process here of getting our, being on that list. Because if we're not put on that list, there is no need for consultation at that point, right? So when we presented April 20th, in the month of May, we got letters in regards to the concern. The UA office sent us a letter. So we said, okay, let's address these concerns first, because that would make sense. Like, you don't do consultation unless you address the issues that are brought up through the EAO office. So we're waiting now. We want to do consultation. Trust me, we had a budget for it. We had a great plan. It's all on hold right now. Right? So, you know, you're right. We haven't had all these consultations from April 20th to now. And it's really because of the responses that we've gotten. And we're just complying with the normal order of items to address first before we get into consultation.
Thank you. If I may, I must say that I'm not only disappointed, but I'm offended by the fact that you're moving so far down the road on a proposal like this that will have significant impact potentially, if it moves ahead, on the citizens of Cache Creek and potentially their existing landfill business that's been in place since 1989. And you use the word respectful and you want to behave in a respectful manner. I feel disrespected, in all honesty, and I wish you'd get your act together and at least consult with the village of Cache Creek, regardless where you are in the process to meet with the Environmental Assessment Office proposals. The only other question I have, I'm sure you're aware that the Ashcroft Band, who also claims a portion of the territory that you're proposing to use, is dead set against this proposal. How do you respond to them? How do you respond to that?
Like I indicated, we've got them on the list for a G2G meeting to address their issues. in regards to what their claims are. So government to government, so we'll bring Bonaparte First Nation, we'll bring Pavilion, we'll bring all these other nations to address, as a community, their issues. In regards to respect and communication out to Cache Creek, you know, it's kind of two ways, sir. If you were so concerned, you're only 5 minutes away. Come to my office, come to see Cookby, and we could have had this discussion as opposed to here in a formal situation. So both our responsibility is to continue with that communication without having to come to here. So the disrespect that you're feeling, it doesn't perpetuate, right? I have to feel free to come to you or and vice versa. And that's what it's about, isn't it?
No, that's not what it's about. If it's only 5 minutes away for me, it's only 5 minutes away for you. You could have and should have come and made a presentation to the Cache Creek Council. And on behalf of the citizens of Cache Creek, I can't help but express our disappointment in the fact that you haven't.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. I'm just going to stop right now. I will simply add, as another mayor, I'm the mayor of the Village of Ashcroft. I share some of Director Ranta's concerns about the lack of consultation, and I would hope that meetings with the villages of Ashcroft and Cache Creek could be scheduled sooner rather than later, because the ball really is in the court of the proponent.
Okay.
And so at the same time that the Village of Cache Creek presentation is being prepared, I would very much appreciate the Village of Ashcroft, which is within the traditional territory of Bonaparte First Nation. We would appreciate seeing that same presentation. Just one question. Mr. Brown's company, I understand, holds a mineral claim on that property, and that's how the water, the drilling was done. I'm not familiar with mining claims. I'm just wondering, is it possible to convert a mining claim or to do that work under a mining claim and then convert it into a landfill project? The two would seem to be very different and would seem to me, again, I confess my ignorance of the subject, they would seem to be two completely different areas governed by two completely different ministries and sets of regulations.
I can't answer that. That's above me too. So, I don't know, Rose, are you able to
Yeah,
answer
I can give a
that?
quick
Yeah,
reply.
okay, good.
Typically for drilling, I'm a waste consultant, and I'll be honest, this is the first time we even went through any kind of permitting process to drill. Normally, you don't have to. So we thought by going down this road, we'd be going above and beyond the expectation for the ministry, and really checking more boxes than are even required. In addition to that, the mine claim has underground rights. Drilling is an underground process. Ian wanted some, confirmation, or the company wanted some confirmation. So we did some drilling test holes and took some soil samples and did mineral analysis on them before we finalized the process. Hopefully that provides some clarity.
All right, still not sure if the one can be converted into the other, but doubtless that will be made clear in the fullness of time. Pardon me, Director Grenier, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Siros, we've heard today quite a few issues of tenure, mineral tenure, land tenure, lease tenure, and of course, traditional territories tenure. We've heard that there's overlapping traditional territories. This obviously isn't the body that deals with any of that. We deal with waste management issues. And we obviously have to entertain waste management proposals from people that have the tenure. So given what I've heard, I'm wondering, do you have any idea of the timing when the issue of tenure, the issue of use of the land, you've mentioned an EOC process, but can you give us any sense of when you think the issue of tenure is going to be resolved such that we could then entertain from whoever is the tenure holder the application, and we could deliberate it at that time? Any idea?
That's a deep question, Matt. I think it's gonna come down to processes, right? So it's, how I look at it is, we have all these dominoes that we have to hit. And instead of looking at the final domino to go down, we have to kind of focus on what's the next step. Because each step has a compounding effect on your answer. Like, how long is it gonna be? Well, it depends on this, it depends on that. My hope is that, you know, by mid-year 2024, we're already in full process of consultation, readdress, because we still have to bring this to our community too. We still have a process to get this all done. It's not just, this is just the initial steps for us. And I know it sounds, you know, Honorable Ranta there has indicated we're moving so fast. It may seem like that, but from my perspective, this is just the first domino. I have so many more things to do. Yeah.
I fully understand the
Yeah.
issue of consultation.
Yeah.
And I think for us, it's not just an issue of consultation, it's actually dealing with the 10-year holder
Ah.
because that's, we're just responding to an application by the 10-year holder. So I think, you know, you've got consultations that you're taking place with the Ashcroft and Cache Creek and landholders and what have you. But I think we're in a situation where we can't reasonably be expected to move forward on this issue until those issues are clearly addressed and somebody comes to us with the authorities that they have.
Yeah.
Whether it's reconciliation issues, whether it's, you know, some accommodation, recognition of traditional territory. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
But I guess at some point you'll have that information. You can present that to us so that we could look at this other issue.
Absolutely.
It's almost like the issue we just dealt with earlier this morning about the jurisdiction over flight paths. We may have a view of it, but we don't have any jurisdiction of it. And I think that we're facing a similar situation on this.
That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. I will give Director Lepso the last word here.
Okay, thank you very much. I have great respect for Chief Anton Frank. Now, thank you for coming here. This is new for our government. This is something new for us. That's why you're seeing technicalities. I don't know what the word is, but you're pushing something new. This is all new. So there's gonna be issues. The Village of Chase, I'm having coffee all the time. I'm always back and forth. So just thank you for your patience, Chief Anton. This is new for us and we'll get through this there. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for your presentation today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We move on to item 8.2, which is building infraction, stop work order 40 Edith Lake Road. Is there anyone to make representation to the board regarding this item? And if you could state your name and address, please.
Hi there, I'm Jewel Morgan. I'm here to represent Lazy FD Ranches, is the owner of said property. I'll just give you the civic address, is 40 Edith Lake Road. We received a stop work order on the property on May 16th, 2023. And I did a follow-up. I'm not sure who the officer was that posted the stop work order, but we did a follow-up and just let them know that we were working on some engineered drawings for what the work we had done on the property. So basically what had happened is my company was hired by the owners of this property to do some upgrades to the facility, most of which we were under the impression did not require any building permit. There was an alteration done at the end of the building that we removed a lean-to structure on the building and ended up extending the main structure of the building on this portion. Now, in retrospect, after the stop work order, we reached out to engineers to get some consulting as far as what we would need required. Obviously, given the nature of this, it's probably not on the top of the stack at most engineering firms these days. So we finally do have in hand a Schedule B from West Edge Engineering. So they're willing to take this on. What we're asking for today is that before a notice be placed on title of the property, is that you allow us an extension to get the a building permit application in with the Schedule B from the engineer and all the required documentation.
Thank you. I've got Director Stamer and Director Morris. Director Stamer.
Thanks, Madam Chair. How much time do you require?
Well, I spoke with with Yu Kang at West Edge Engineering yesterday. He's pretty well through it at this point. So I guess it's a matter of, I could submit the application as of tomorrow with the Schedule B, but if I allow his office more time, they would have sealed drawings, which then we could maybe just do an open close scenario.
So supplemental, I guess, thank you, Madam Chair, to staff. Would it be appropriate for a 90-day extension on something like this? Even though the recommendation is for the stop work, but there seems like additional information, Mr. Kraus?
Through the chair, yes, you can certainly put a timeline on it. I'm not sure if 90 days is appropriate. I know in the past, the board has sometimes done 30 days or 60 days. But if you set a number, you can certainly do that. We'd prefer that the recommendation would remain that a notice would be filed on title if a complete building permit application is not received within the set time frame that you decide.
While it being weather the way it is, I will make a motion that we go with 90 days.
That will come up later. Right now, this is just a
Oh, I'm
hearing.
sorry, Madam
It's
Chair.
okay. So we're on, it's okay. So thank you very much. And Director Morris, you had a question.
I just wanted to notify everybody I'm going to recuse myself from the vote, and I would like to leave from the conversation at this point on this particular issue.
All right. Is there any further conversation on this particular issue before Director Morris leaves and comes back in again? No? All right. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Director Morris, I'm sorry. For the next one? For this one right now? We're not voting on it right now?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Public hearing.
Hang up.
Got some stuff saying.
No, you don't have to leave just yet. All right, and thank you very much. All right, does anyone else have any questions or comments? All right, we move on to 8.3, Building Infraction Stop Work Order 9209 Keelty Road. We have an opportunity for the owner to make representation to the board. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? No, no one is here to speak to this one. All right, now we move on to 9.1. Director Morris, this would be where you would recuse yourself from the vote. This is we do have a recommendation, but Director Stamer, I believe you would like to amend the recommendation.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, it seems like the owners and the builders are trying to do their very best, what's right. And I would like to make a motion that we extend it 90 days before we give that person the time for the building permit and the stop work order according.
All right. Director Houghton seconds that. Thank you very much. Discussion. I have Director Sao.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I noticed in the report there was a staff concern that likely public access and, deemed unsafe. Can we, in addition to that amendment to add 90 days, can we have also amended to have the property owner address that unsafe, maybe mark it off that maybe some stairs that are, unsafe? Mr. Kraus, thank you.
Mr. Kraus?
Through the chair, you can certainly request that. I don't know that we can enforce that, but you can certainly request it.
Is this one, just out of interest, Mr. Kraus, is this one of the reasons that we would not normally go with 90 days? Would we go with 30 or 60 to minimize the period of time during which people could potentially run into trouble?
That's correct. So, I mean, in May is when our building inspector issued the stop work order. We sent a letter. In June, he talked to the owner and we heard absolutely nothing until today at the podium. So certainly if this does get them going on a building permit, that's great. But here we're not saying that it has to be completed within 90 days. It's that we want a building permit application in our office within 90 days. So typically it's less than 90 days because we hope they can get at least an application. It doesn't mean they have to complete construction. And once we have an application in, then we can also have some authority on the ground to say, let's cordon off and ensure there's some safety done here.
So Director Stamer, would you have an appetite to reducing that period to submit the application, give them 30 days rather than 90? That's fine. And I don't think we need.
I would certainly, from the looks like thumbs up, yes, 30 days. And as Mr. Kraus alluded to, and as to Director Onslow's concerns, we can hopefully address those once we get a building permit.
All right, so just to be clear, the recommendation that we are now considering is that the corporate officer be authorized to file a notice pursuant to the authority of section 57 against the title of Lazy FD Ranches and Hay Sales Limited of 40 Edith Lake Road, unless a building permit application is received within 30 days.
You have to ask the secondary also.
Okay, and is that all right? Everyone's okay with that? Thumbs up? This is just to submit the application. They don't have to complete the work in 30 days. I just have to check with Director Houghton. You're all right with that, Director Houghton? Okay. Director Sal, you have a supplemental.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Supplement to that and, now that because we are aware of this fact, would us extending 30, even 30, there's even 7 days from now until that 7 day, if people get injured, are we liable? Like,
Without the notice on title, there's liability, yes. So the sooner we get on this, the better. And as soon as we get a building permit in, we can start taking further steps.
sorry, supplement again. So as soon as the building permit is in place, then that liability is off the table then? Or is that?
It's reduced.
I have Director Getz and Director Middleton.
Just a question. So we extend this, so does the building allow, do they allow to keep building? And I've got a problem with somebody who with unauthorized removal of a work order. That kind of throws my trust into the garbage can right there. So I'm a little worried about doing this and then continuing on, and removal of the stop work order, I think, is kind of a no-go for me, so.
Thank you. And Director Middleton, apparently you looked surprised. Did you have something to? You pass. All right. Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments? Alternate Director Beppel?
Yes, and I would say that this comment or question is in terms of this item and then item 9.2 as well. In that, wondering, do we know whether more taxes will be collected from these properties now that there's improvements on them, regardless of whether there are building permits in place to build the structures? Like, how does BC Assessment even know that these changes exist?
Through the chair, yes. So when we have these infractions and the board authorizes a notice on title, we will notify BC Assessment, and then BC Assessment can determine to do a site visit or do what they have to do to determine whether or not to increase the valuation of the improvement on the property. So we do alert BC Assessment, who has the authority on that.
Further questions or comments? On the amended recommendation then, all those in favor? Opposed? We have Directors Bats, Newstater, Lepso gets Laird and Hall. Opposed? And O'Reilly. I'm sorry, because you came in late, I. And Director Sarai ditto. All right, so the motion carries. We move on to 9.2. We have the building infraction 9209 Kilty Road in Area P. We do have a recommendation.
Second.
Sorry, Director Thorpe and Vice Chair Smith seconds that. Thank you. Any questions or comments on this one? Seeing no hands in the air on the question, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. 9.3, Shuswap Watershed Council alternates. Have we had any directors submit interest in being an alternate?
Thank you, Chair. So the Shuswap Watershed Committee alternate appointment was discussed at the last meeting of the board. And subsequent to that, the following people are known by staff to have expressed interest. And because this is a list that is more than 2 people long and there's room for 2 alternates, the procedure bylaw expresses how voting should be conducted. So we believe that the following people are interested. If there is more, or if you're about to hear your name and you don't want to be anymore, then please do shout out and let us know. Alternate Director Karpuk, Director Sarai, Director Morris, Director Houghton, and Director Middleton. That was the list that we had of people who had expressed interest. If there is anyone who believes that is incorrect or would like their names added or removed, then please let us know. Otherwise, I will need to conduct balloting in accordance with the procedure bylaw.
All right, Director. I had Directors Sarai, Middleton, Houghton, and I'm sorry, who was the 4th?
Sarai, Morris, Houghton, Middleton, and alternate Director Karpuk.
That would be 2.
All right, so Director Sarai has taken his name off. Director Grenier.
Just wondering if we should be asking Director Morris to come back.
Is she?
Just make it clarified, are we good to submit the permit then in 7 days? So that kind of-
Yeah, that would be. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So Director Morris, we're just talking about the people who put their names forward to be an alternate for the Shuswap Watershed Council. And we have Directors Middleton, Houghton, yourself, and alternate Director Karpuk. Now, because we only need 2 and we currently have 4 names, unless 2 people withdraw their names, then we will have a vote. Director Middleton?
I'm happy to withdraw my name if we've got others that are willing and able.
All right, thank you. Now, Mr. Corporate Officer, since we have Directors Houghton and Morris, who are both directors, and we have an alternate director, do the 2 directors trump the alternate director?
That is a truly fascinating question, Chair.
You're welcome.
Considering that my understanding is the way City of Kamloops appoint their alternate directors, and alternate Director Karpuk is a City of Kamloops director, is they're not actually substituting for any particular director, but as a pool, the non-elected councillor, the non-director councillors function as alternates for whomever is unable to attend on any given point. I would honestly feel that Directors Houghton and Morris probably outrank Director Karpuk, who has no permanent place on this board. So if you wish to choose accordingly, then we would then have 2 directors who are seeking 2 alternate spots.
Right. In that case, as I see it, we have 2 TNRD board directors who would like to act as the 2 alternate spots. We have Directors Houghton and Morris. Who? Sorry, Director Lepso?
Yeah, thank you very much. As I sit on this committee, actually yesterday, we couldn't have a financial vote because we needed 8 out of 10. My question is, I know the Village of Chase contributes money and Kamloops does. do these other areas where these directors are asking to be on the board, do they actually contribute money to this watershed committee? I should have asked you earlier.
Mr. Vieira may have input.
I am just searching for that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
A number of electoral areas contribute, and I believe area L or P and area L and P are both contributing.
Okay, thank you.
Members to that.
Thank you. That was a very good question. So we would have Director Houghton and Director Morris, both of whose areas contribute to this. Do we need a motion, Mr. Corporate Officer, since we do not need a vote, or?
I think it would be useful to have a motion, Madam Chair, so that we've then got the certified resolution we can.
So moved.
provide.
Second.
All right, the motion being that Directors Houghton and Morris be named as alternates to the Shoe Swap Watershed Council. All right, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried, and we are going to have a very brief 5-minute break.
You need to outline the general reason. It's not. No, actually, that's actually. I was trying to decide whether or not I want to do it. Oh, yeah, so. Consider that they have a director of the we don't really have things stated in general terms and reason why it's of this because she did mention very vaguely about having whether or not that is a general terms. That's why I think it was not stated. I just wanted to have
All right, thank you very much, everyone. We move on to item 10.1, septage disposal services repeal bylaw number 2808. We do have a recommendation. Director Bass and Director Blackwell. Very passionate about septage disposal services, clearly. All right, any discussion on this?
Yeah, I could say, no, I won't. It's very nice to see these old outdated bylaws, et cetera, removed from the books. Thank you.
Yes. Oh. All right, on the question then, all those in favor, opposed if any, that is carried. Item 10.2, board remuneration bylaw 2835. I'm going to ask Corporate Officer Lois to just give us the Coles Notes version of what is happening here and why. 10 seconds starting now.
Thank you, Chair. I won't do it in 10 seconds. Than that, I'll just be able to joke about how this is a very old bylaw which we're proposing you repeal. It's lasted almost 2.5 weeks in existence. As you are all aware, at the last meeting, you adopted Board Remuneration Bylaw 2825. However, a number of minor and typographical issues were identified in the bylaw subsequently. That had an implementation clause that said it would come into effect on January 1st, 2024. So it has not at this point come into effect. The proposed bylaw 2835, which is in front of you, would repeal that bylaw and have a new bylaw with the same implementation date of January 1st, 2024. In staff's opinion, this bylaw will correctly have the effect of what we believe was intended to be done at the last bylaw. The biggest change is in the table in section 4.1, which has now been updated to specify remuneration as of January 2024. Against which future amendments will be made in accordance with the formula, rather than the old one, which had a 2022 figure with adjustments which still needed to be made to it. Ms. Ellison, our General Manager of People and Engagement, is here if you have any further questions about the actual content of the proposed remuneration itself. But as I said, our intent is for bylaw 2835 to successfully do what you intended to do with 2825, and this bylaw would repeal 2825, so it would be gone.
Thank you very much. So we have 3 separate recommendations. All right, Director Laird and seconded by Director Renta. Any discussion on the first recommendation? Director Blackwell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, through to staff. On the staff report, I believe page 2 of 9, under discussion, there's a line that says one-time increase 8% for municipal directors and 15% for electoral area directors based on a review of other regional district rates for remuneration. Where is that report on that review? Where was that brought to this board? Thank you.
Yes, through the chair, that was brought through to this board for discussion at Committee of the Whole on October 13th. And then it was further approved as increases to remuneration at the last board meeting on November 23rd.
Okay, thank you. I was looking for that date so I could read that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments on recommendation 1? Seeing none on the question, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Move 2 was Director O'Reilly, seconded by Director Renta. Any discussion? On the question, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. 3rd recommendation. Director Thorpe, second by Director Middleton. Any discussion on this? On the question, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Development application 11.1, we have zoning amendment bylaw number 2834. Martin Prairie Road in Pritchard. Director Houghton, seconded by Director Thorpe. Discussion. Oh, sorry, Director Bass. Okay, sorry. Is there any discussion on this? No. On the question then, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. All right, move on to report 12.1.1 provisional 2024-2028 5-year financial plan. And I would like to call on CFO Fox to provide a short overview.
Thank you, Chair, through to the board. So I wanted to start just by saying we've brought you the provisional 2024 to 2028 5-year financial plan and also a separate capital plan. We have had a survey for public engagement earlier in 2023. We've met with the board on this the beginning of November for a budget workshop. We also met to review the budget, the provisional or the draft budget with the finance committee. We did incorporate some of the board requested changes that I'll go through briefly. I'm going to take you through at a high level what has been requested. All of the details are still provided in the attachment. So even though we'll go through the budget today at a high level, respecting the fact that some of you have already seen this twice, I needed to do my due diligence here today with this being the provisional adoption and make sure you understand what exactly it is I'm bringing forward and if there were any changes made. Since the workshop and committee, the board have made a few changes that impacted the total tax requisitions. We did incorporate, the committee had requested, when they looked at the reserve schedule, I had the reserve summary showing all the year-end balances in each of the reserves. So a request was made to just show a summary that showed the opening balance and then money going into the reserve and money coming out with an ending balance. So I have incorporated that and included it in the attachments. Further to that, there was some discussion about ensuring that the board understood the changes that were happening in order to go out. If you go to your constituents, is it easy for you to find and understand the changes that are occurring financially in the budget? So we incorporated into the body of the report quite a summary of increases and decreases that have happened in each of the departments. Usually where we get the most questioning is around the administrative budget. And of course, that includes CAO's office, communications, legislative services. There's a high component of wages within that department. It's the one that's more scrutinized. We have tried to explain the increases quite in depth there for you. A lot of the major changes were due to the addition of the cybersecurity position, increase to the transfers to reserves, but I'll take you through that briefly. I'm just going to check through my notes here. I've covered everything. I think it would be helpful if you allow us or me to go through the presentation for you. If there's any clarifying questions or any questions as we're going through, absolutely. If you could hold off making motions, it does get a little bit harder to control the flow of the information that I have to go through if that occurs in the middle. And I do like you to have all the information in front of you in order to make the motion. So, I mean, all the power to you, but it would be nice if we can wait until the end. So that's my request there. And I do have a paper here to note anything that might be something that you would want to bring up again at the end. And you will obviously have the ability to make decisions and have questions at the end in regards to the numbers that have been put before you. Each of the renditions, I've tried to give you a little bit of a different presentation format because giving you the same information over and over is difficult. This in the draft budget, I did like the fact that I gave you a 24 to 23 comparison document that was like a Coles Notes version. I did not include that in this. The amount of time it takes me to put together all those attachments is quite extensive. And I was just running out of time at the end. But what I did do is attach the summary of changes so that you can defend any of the changes that are happening in either of any of the departments to any of the services. So I just quickly go over, these are some of the things that we've talked to you about, as far as the State of the Union. We're going to talk about the provisional taxation, provisional operation budget, provisional utility budget, the 5-year capital plan. I am going to ask, if the board would consider approving a provisional operational budget and approving actually the final capital plan, which really allows staff to act upon quotes and capture prices that they are anticipating for those projects early in the year. So hopefully that will be a consideration. We have done a significant amount of work. It's probably the most reductions that I've brought forward in a budget. The staff have worked really hard in their areas to address the increasing surpluses, to make sure that the expenditures were in line with what was actually occurring. So those surpluses were reduced. Reducing surplus does reduce revenue in the following year, which can increase taxation. So we tried to look at the expenditures within the following year to make sure they were in line and we weren't pushing taxation up too high. We have really struggled over the last year, really thin on resources and capacity, which has delayed some projects. We've had to make adjustments within the financial system, but we are making a lot of headway there to improving efficiencies. There will, and I did leave in this report some information on the financial system that we have right now and the issues that we are having with that. Even since then, and some of you might have noticed, we had to send out an email saying that our financial system accidentally sent you duplicate copies of your receipts and transactions. That has caused us a little bit of delay as we've been moving to a cloud system, and the service that we're getting is not good. And moving to the cloud actually is a slower system at this point than we had previously, which is causing other issues. We are working with other municipalities and regional districts on this. We are going to get together and talk about solutions. We did have a CAO meeting where we were talking about shared services, and this is something that did come up that we have in common. And since then, I've kind of rallied the troops because it's getting to the point where I really believe that they're hampering our operations with the service that, or lack thereof, service that they're bringing to us. And many people are feeling the same way. What that means is right now in the financials, I don't have anything really to address a larger financial system. It isn't something I don't think we could do in 2024, but I think we will have to bring you a report in 2024 trying to solution the problems that we're having and looking at ways of funding something, because I think it would be a larger investment. So I will report back to you during next year on the outcome and what I think might be a solution there. So I won't continue to read through everything. Obviously, there is a focus on the strategic plan during the year where we've looked at reserve funds as necessary to reduce increases in support services. And we've had really limited budget flexibility. The cost of goods and services has extremely impacted us here, as well as many other organizations. But as you guys are well aware, in our solid waste department, the cost of services went up substantially, to the point that as staff, we made a decision to kind of come up with a creative out-of-the-box solution, knowing the pressures that you would be under, to kind of bring something forward reasonable before bringing in reserve money from the solid waste reserve. The increases were such that certainly would be very hard to bear up close to the 20% increase mark. So we have brought forward reserve funds within solid waste and development services over a 5-year plan, kind of bringing it down over time to try and offset the large increases we were seeing. If we did not make those reductions, we would have been faced with much larger increases to bring to you. These are some of the items we talked about when we met with you guys during the budget workshop. I'm not, again, going to read through them, but just as a reminder, there were the solid waste and recycling contract cost increases, a cybersecurity resource, a new position, negotiated wage increases built into the budget, $30,000 increase in the regional grant and aid, and the director indemnity travel communication increase. So between the draft budget and this provisional budget, there is about $220,000 worth of increase. 100,000 of that is from the director decisions. $60,000 of that is from a casual wage that was missed when I transitioned to a new payroll tracking system, and I missed casual wages. So I needed to put that back in there. It's really important for us to have that to address. We've been working with the casual for well over a year to make sure that with the EOC, we've had coverage, and a large part of that casual coverage has been covered by when there's an active EOC, that wage is covered. When there is not an active EOC and they're working on that, we're paying for that. So although we may not have to use the total amount, if there isn't an active EOC and we're still working on those tasks, we have to cover that as the TNRD. And also right now, because the system issues, there is a need to ensure that we have adequate resources to back up our current team with catch up and backlog. So I just have built that back into the budget. And we also have some planned vacancies that are going to take place in the facilities department. And we want to make sure that with that transition, we have some wages available to make sure that we have cross-training and coverage in that department over the next year. So that has been part of that increase there. One of the challenges to giving you guys a large 5-year plan is to focus in on 2024 without giving you the 5 years, because then we forget to talk about the 5 years in the 5-year plan. So right now we're at about a 5% expenditure increase that I have kind of broken down for you guys by, and as you guys have been aware, I've said this a number of times, 2023 was approved plan with capital and operating together. In order to shift that, and I put all the operating in 2024 only into the operating plan and capital in a separate plan, it kind of can be misleading if I don't back out the capital and some of the one-time things that were skewing the numbers to give you the true increase. So I've just tried to include that in your package, budget package, so you can kind of follow the numbers a little bit for comparison only. And then including the utilities operating expenditures. So just important to remember, and we were meeting with some of the utilities commission yesterday, the utilities fund is money that is recouped for the utility services by user fees, parcel tax. The operating fund is specifically from taxation and other revenue sources. They're actually treated as two separate funds. So it's important for me when I talk about taxation, we don't include the utilities in there because that's for user fees. And just an important piece to remember. So within the recommendation, you will see the number quoted here for the total under 2024 for total operating expenditures. So I've already talked to you about the additional 228. There's a few other noted, the board discretionary travel allowance, board communication expenditures. So that just all kind of broke down to about $100,000. So that's where those numbers were coming from. And then we addressed a casual in the film commission for about $14,000. So when you looked at the draft budget compared to provisional, the film might jump out as a high percentage, but because the film budget is a small budget, a little number makes it look like it's a high percentage increase. The other comment that I'll make is the expenditures look as though they've gone up in the film. There's an anticipated grant we don't know if we're actually receiving, but we thought we would acknowledge it within the provisional budget, because if we get it, then it gives us the power to spend because the board has approved the related expenditures. So you see that as an increase in expenditures, but not an increase in taxation, because grants are the revenue that's funding that. So the recommendation before you is that the board approve the provisional 2024-2028 five-year financial plan attached with total operating expenditures in 2024 of $64 million, which is made up of 61 of general fund and 3 million of the utilities fund. Remember, the provisional approval is really just for us to continue business as usual. We do recognize that anything new typically isn't something we act upon until there's full approval, but it just gives us the authority to continue to spend business as usual. We are looking that the board approve the 2024-2028 five-year capital plan that's attached. It's important, it's $11,700,000. It's important from my experience for the different places I've been, we capture the costs of the capital for the next year with quotes. Lots of time, and especially now, the time value of money, it can shift and change. And in order for us to capture any contracts early on in the year, if we have approval on the projects that are in the 2024 capital plan, it's good for us for business. So I am looking for that. There is grant funding. There's a funding plan that funds the capital plan in place that requires reserve funds in there as well. And those reserve funds you would see as withdrawals from that reserve fund summary. So I just want to point that out. The overall capital plan is broken down, like I said, between operating and above you would see in your package, you'll see the funds funding the capital, and you will see the capital broken down by department. There is also significant capital over 250 schedule if you don't want to look at all the tiny little items. And there's a full detailed capital plan. I've also tried to, almost like a Coles Notes version, the attachment number 1 is by each department. And what that does is it says the admin department has these changes that have happened in their operating budget. These are the costs. Here's the capital costs associated with each department. So it's all separated up. So if you wanted to go look at community services, you'd see community services changes with their operating plan, with their capital plan, all in one spot. So you don't have to go chasing around the different numbers in the bigger document. Please remember that our communications department has created a number of documents for you to use when you're talking to your constituents that are helpful. This is one of them. Right now, we have a tax requisition, a global requisition increase of 8.9%. Please remember that is not like a municipality. That is not something, it doesn't mean anything to any of you. To be honest, it just means the TNRD's tax requisition amount went up that much, but each individually in your areas, your tax requisitions have changed at different percentages. So if we were to look at the electoral areas, you can see that it goes from electoral area A changing by 2% to electoral area P changing by 8.7%. We have the director of operations, Jamie Vieira, and I have met with each electoral area director, and we have also put out an invite to any municipal director and or their staff to meet with us, and we will meet with them. We have heard from a couple that we're going to meet with afterwards to just go through the numbers, but it's important that you guys get the opportunity to see your requisitions because there's a list of services in there that have different changes and different numbers that add up to the total. So just to assure the public and yourselves that we have taken that time and tried to address any concerns or questions that have come out of there for those shifts and changes. Municipalities, City of Kamloops at 8.9. These ones are fairly consistent. Most of these are the administrative portion of the costs, and 8.6%. A caveat, please remember all these numbers are based on 2023's assessment values. So when we get the new assessment values, what that means for you guys is we put that in there, and all of a sudden the portion of the pie that each of you get changes based on your assessment values. I can't know that information right now. So if Sun Peaks went way up, Some of the others might go down. It's all in perspective of what those numbers are going to look like. And please remember, all this information is within the taxation document of your budget. I also have the dashboards that the communications department created. They were updated. We happen to have a baby in staff, so I'm gonna hand those out to you afterwards, but there was a little bit of my delay getting that out to you. So I just wanted to let you know those little sheets that you can work with your constituents will be there. So the provisional taxation requisition, so I've tried to show you this as well, the change from 23 to 24, the 8.9%, what that total looks like. If you would have looked at this budget prior, you would have saw in the second year out, the number went way up. We've tried to work and make that increase much more reasonable, and something I think the board should be able to buy into the 5-year plan a little bit better if we are looking at that and talking to that. And it's to do with the surpluses, because we don't budget surpluses, although we're getting $4 to $8 million worth of surplus. So as soon as that comes in, taxation goes down. But when we don't budget for it, it looks like it jumps right up. So we've tried to manage that in a way that it's more reasonable. I do really like to talk to this graph. It's very important that we understand that if we had the red line, 1% increase year over year, where we would be right now. So that's that red line. And it's interesting, if you look at the CPI increase, the green line, and you look at our tax requisition increase, we're actually following the flow of that, which I think is telltale to say that CPI does affect us. Although we're not increasing to the level of CPI, we are having to increase to our costs to keep in line as costs go up. So I think it's just an interesting graph to look at to understand that we're not doing anything out of the ordinary. We can track back to 2018 and you can see that we're still following the same path. What I'd say is in 2019 and 2020, some reserves were being used to fund to lower the tax rate for COVID. And when that went away, we had to increase to meet operations because operations didn't increase. So that's why you see a little bit of a dip there. Remember again that these are in there to help you understand the property tax calculation. These here give you an idea of the costs of the service that you're paying for. There is one there for each of your areas and each of your municipality. I don't know. I think this is such a great document. It's the first time I've had something like this created, and I'm hoping, especially for the EA directors, that this is helpful for you. On the data sheets, there is information of cost per 100,000. I do also have that a cost per 680,000, 680,000 if you wanted that. It gets quite extensive, the worksheet, if we try and provide you all those columns. So we tried to just put it down to 100,000. But if anybody else would like that, you can reach out. So this is also, we have specified areas. So we've created these costs per service in those specified areas for you to refer to. This is a whole lot of numbers. All that really tells you is right now in our utilities department, we have a whole bunch of 2% increases. We know that's actually not the case because we've brought to the Utilities Commission right now some very hard decisions on making sure that our utility systems actually have enough money to reasonably operate and save for future capital. So that will be coming to you shortly, but right now in the provisional, this is what is included in the utility systems with user fees. Something we also haven't talked about really is parcel tax. So in most of the areas other than a few of the water systems, the parcel tax is a recoup of the debt that we've borrowed to pay for capital. So that's what the parcel tax is and why it's separate from the user fee. And typically you can see the parcel tax directly offsets the debenture and interest costs. There's a couple new, I think the Loon Lake Fire Protection and Black Pines Waterworks parcel tax included in there because we are going to try and get access to borrowing because those projects are coming to completion. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up fairly quickly because I know you guys have had a long meeting here. So you can see that a large portion of our revenue is covered by grants, 43% by taxation. Please ignore the minus. My system produces revenues in a negative. That's all that means. Just want to see if there's anything else that jumps out. Oh, and also the MFA debentures, please remember part of that, the revenue coming in there is to pay the loans that we authorize on their behalf. When you go into your budget attachment, I don't expect you to read all these numbers. What I want you to recognize is that there is a financial statement in there. There's a statement on your income and your total revenue for the TNRD, of which I've provided the revenue by category. Where this is kind of nice is you can see the total taxation. It's not broken down by department like a lot of the other areas of the financials are. So if you're looking to see the total cost of the organization by category and the revenues by category, you can go to here. So you can see our total bank charges, our total elections costs, our total grant and aids, our total janitorial costs this way. So just want to make sure that you're aware of that. And oh, you know, at the end, the total costs of the expenditures and revenues zero each other out, essentially, for a balanced budget. Again, this is just to point you in the right direction. We have a number of departments. I did provide you with a list, and I've also this time in the report put the different services in each of the departments so that you, if you're wondering where, because I'm like, oh, just go look to the department, it's in there. But if you didn't know what service was under which department, it was hard to find those costs. So I tried to give you a little bit of a indication of where to find those costs. This again just shows by department all the revenues broken down. So just like the previous one was by category, they still total up to the same number. It's just showing it to you categorized in a different way, summarized in a different way. The expenditures broken down by department, which directly offset one another. What I have shown in the report is, again, the numbers if I work the capital out and the one-time grant for the community building fund. So it's just important to be able to compare apples to apples and explain to you the increases up and down. These are the increases that were used within the documents that provided this. And I know this can seem overwhelming, but I think it's really important if you went and looked at these to explain, if you were asked, why is administration costing so much? Number one, know what departments are in administration, from communications to human resources to people, well, I guess it's called people and engagement, human resources, legislative services, finance. Like these are huge departments that carry all of the services that are in here, plus the director's costs and indemnities. They're all in those costs. So this will really be able to explain the changes there. Remember that even though the expenditures are going down in some areas, the revenue that was supporting those expenditures go down. So if our surplus goes down, I need more taxation. So even though the expenditures are going down because we're moving out and we're transferring different things, transfers to reserves, sometimes the taxation still goes up because you don't have the same revenue to cover those costs. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. So that is basically me taking you through the operating budget and the different components of that. The capital plan is separate from the operating. The capital plan, this here is the solid waste management department capital. Just trying to make sure I've got the right thing here. And you'll be able to go through and see the details if that is what you want to do. The utility services capital, again, is presented just separate from the rest of the total, but it is there in detail for you to see. We break it down by the area, but we also have all the individual items listed in there. One of the exercises we did after the draft budget is we did meet with the EEA directors. The Community Works Fund, or formerly the Gas Tax Fund, a large amount of the money was not allocated yet, and it was really important that we allocate that out. The program is changing after 2024, so we did work with those directors to make sure that if there were any opportunities to fund capital in the plan, that they were kind of reviewed and given the chance to do that if that's what they wanted. And we did make some of those changes. So where you would see the change within the capital plan is there's a column that says where it's being funded from. And if it needed grant funding and now it's Community Works, you would see the shift in that. Or if it was from reserves and now it's gas tax, we could put money back in the reserve and fund it from the Community Works Fund. So you can see with the capital funding that there's a large amount of reserves. Now we've shifted in the style that we're doing. So we're not directly funding capital from taxation. What we're doing now on the operating plan is transferring money to the reserve, and the reserve is funding the capital. So it's indirectly getting funded by taxation with reserve funds. But it's important, we've done a 10-year capital plan, and that 10-year capital plan, at least 5 years of that plan right now are fully funded, how we're presenting it. Even if some require grant funding, we've identified that. But we now, which we didn't have in the past, we're able to present a fully funded 5-year financial plan. That's really important for planning, so we know exactly how much we need to transfer from the operating plan to the reserves to fund all the capital. So it's a huge exercise. It's taken a lot of work to get us to this point, level of understanding across the organization, and bring that to you. I don't think it's 100%, but I think we're really dialing in, and we're way better off than when we presented a plan before and having a 1-year capital plan within a 5-year operating plan. So I feel much more confident that we're going to be able to achieve the capital that we're putting out there. So the source of funds, and I've kind of given you this in brief. This is just a 5-year outlook of capital spending to $32 million. And in the utilities fund, it's $26 million. The reserve fund summary, and in here, I'm showing you the year-end total. We're kind of consistent, but we're going down from about 38 million to 31 million over the 5 years. You can dive deep into wanting to understand what's happening in each reserve if you go into the attachment, because I've given you that reserve funding in and out summary. We have committed to trying to achieve 10% surplus in each of our departments. So I've kind of laid that out, given that to you in the attachment. And what I think we've made strides in reducing the surplus. And I think where we should probably go with this is we'll do a check-in as staff to see where we think we are with our costs. It won't be till close to the end of next year, but we are looking at and of course, tried to achieve that this year, but being shorthanded for most of the year, put a little bit of put us in a difficult spot into trying to achieve that. But looking at reserve policy and a surplus policy to try and make sure that there's some overarching guidance, because obviously we've talked about this a little bit, but there's not a whole lot of time for me to meet with the entire board and go through every reserve and every surplus. That does pose to be a bit of a challenge, but we have committed to the finance committee to try and meet more often throughout the next year so we can have more of those discussions. Okay, I am not going through all this with you. So I think at this point, I wanted to make sure that I gave the due diligence I needed to do today for presentation of the provisional plan for you to accept. Kind of a reminder. I know that you guys don't all live and breathe this like I do. And I was a little worried after lunch that I was going to be able to keep you guys going, and now it's 4 o'clock and you're still here. So thank you. And the floor is open to the board for questions at this time, and I know we'll have to address the motions.
Director Ranto?
There, I see in the capital expenditures 2023, 2024, there's a line here that says Cache Creek Airstrip resurfacing, $11,659. And that's in 2023 and there's nothing in 2024. Does that mean the work was done in 2023? Or is that liable to be carried over into 2024? I don't recall resurfacing up there.
Chair, through to Director Ranta, I will have to look into it. My recollection is that was a Community Works grant funded project. And I am not sure of the status. I will have to get back to you on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Director Thorpe?
I may be able to answer that a little bit. I know that it was a Community Works funded by Area I. And I think you'd probably want to talk to Kim because there was a larger grant. I think it was supposed to be 20,000. And I think they only ended up using 11. And it might have been, some of it was the resurfacing that they didn't have to do as much. Now I'm going from memory, so bear with me. And some of it might have had something to do with a specific gate, if I recall. But yeah, does that help at all?
Any further questions or comments? No.
Recommendation.
Thank you, Director Sarai, seconded by Director Blackwell. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none on the question, all those in favor, opposed if any, that is carried. We have the building permit activity highlights for your information and,
Yeah, I'll move to.
oops, oh, sorry. There we go. After all that work, we almost missed half of it. Any questions or comments? On the Director Grenier?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to understand, Director Fox, CFO Fox. You are looking for approval of the 5-year capital plan. We're approving a provisional budget so that you can move forward with the activities in January and carry on. And in March, we approve the final plan. If we approve this second part of it, do we have the opportunity, like the provisional budget, to make changes to the 5-year plan if those are deemed to be appropriate in March as well? I get the fact that you want to be able to move forward with the capital plan in 2024, certainly. But we've been, I guess, the board has been working since its existence without a 5-year plan. We've got 3 more months to scrutinize the plan, but give you the direction to carry forward. Would it help if we said that the board approved the provisional 2024? I just want to get clarity on what your expectation is. Is it finished or is it adjustable in March?
Thank you, Chair, through to the board. I am actually looking for final approval. Now, of course, what I would be doing is taking that capital plan and putting it in the 5-year financial bylaw. Of course, if the board wanted to make changes to numbers in 2025 beyond that, in that period of time, it wouldn't substantially affect the overall financial plan. Where I do get concerned is if I don't get approval, and if I only had provisional approval of the capital plan, it really handcuffs staff from being able to act upon anything that they have to do early on in the year. And sometimes our contracts and the different things we're trying to capture are earlier in the year. Yeah, so I think my hope is that you'll approve the 5-year plan, knowing that we're not acting on anything beyond 2024. If there's something that comes up in conversation that you guys want to address before March, I think that can be managed.
Supplementary. So we have we have a capital plan that goes, thankfully, 5-year plan that goes well out and it involves very major expenditures. And we have the opportunity for those years out to revisit that if we think it's prudent to do that. So nothing we're doing today prevents us from having a sober second thought on some of those items, timing wise, cost wise, any of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on the recommendation? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? You're opposed?
Yep.
Director Rain is opposed. That is carried. We move on to 12.12 for information building permit.
I'm just wondering if you guys would mind if Kim gave Director Ranta what has happened with the airstrip? Would that be okay, or would you like us to address that later on?
Sure, go ahead.
So with the Cache Creek airstrip, originally it was a $20,000 gas tax project funded through Area I. Just like Director Thorpe mentioned. Of it, 8,800, it was, and change, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, was used to do some sort of resurfacing up there. I believe it was where they're doing the drag strip right now. The $11,000 remaining, I've reached out to the CAO a couple times. The first time they were looking for more funding because there wasn't enough. Haven't heard back on a project, so I'm not too sure where it stands. It's kind of in hold, but it has been for a couple of years. Perfect, because I'd love to close it. Okay, send me a note. Is that everything that's okay? That's good? Okay, thank you.
Any comments on the building permit activity highlights? We move on to 13.1, depending on which version of the agenda you're looking at. We do have a recommendation under committees, and Director Bass, I believe you have something to say.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we defer this until we close off the 2024 budget so that our finance department would have time and energy to do this.
Thank you very much, Director Bass, seconded by Director Sarai. Director Laird.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The one recommendation is here is we're just asking that we put together a surplus and reserve policy. I don't think that is going to affect our overall budget at all. We're just asking direction that the staff work with finance company, the finance committee and get that started. If it's not going to happen, it'll probably happen in 2024, but I don't like deferring a policy or a recommendation that we've already discussed at the finance committee, and it's not affecting our budget at all right now. Thank you.
Director Bass?
Yeah, it's not affecting the budget at all. I just want to ensure that the staff has the time to put into it. If we don't put a time element in here, they may feel obligated to start it now. And I just want to give them the reassurance that we're not looking for this until they finish the budget.
Director Laird.
That's not our expectations at all with this motion. It's just, it's an expectation that the finance committee would like to have a policy in place, to actually address the 2025 budget. And it's not an onerous on the staff. It's a committee in progress, and it's a giving direction of that we'd like the support of the staff to work through that for a policy and a bylaw.
So if I understand Director Bass correctly, by deferring it until after budget 2024 is finalized, that would bring it back to the board sometime in March or early April. And because this would not be able to be done in time to have any effect whatsoever on the 2024 budget. So by just giving staff that time to finish off 2024 budget, bring it back, and then that gives us plenty of time to look at it for 2025.
And from a practical purpose, I don't know if we want to get into a discussion on this right now when this meeting is dragging on. It's not urgent. We've all agreed we want to do this. It's just a matter of giving staff the time to finish the current work they're doing. And as CFO Fox continually reminds us that she has been short-staffed. So I just don't want her to feel obligated that she has to start this now. She can start at the end of March.
Director Stamer.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Ms. Fox? What is your position on this?
Thank you, Chair, through to the board. I certainly would not be able to work on it prior to March or April. And the scope of this could be small or it could be really big. There's 190 reserves. So it would be a matter of, is this a policy or by law per reserve, or is this an overarching one for the TNRD? I'm not sure of the whole scope of what maybe the directors are looking for. I know what I'm kind of trying to do.
So if I may get a supplement, we're gonna have probably at least one finance meeting before that time. Like, is that correct? Didn't we mention that we were gonna have one before then? So I mean, we're being pretty frank here. Why don't we still follow the recommendation as long as the chair is okay with it? Chair Bass, and we know that realistically, nothing's gonna actually happen at your office till March or April, but we can still at least see if the board is in favor of this policy being proposed, and then we can discuss it at finance and go to the next step and then the next step, and we can have those conversations when it comes to reserves and what they're gonna look like and how it's gonna be reported.
Yeah, sure. I just don't want the finance department to feel obligated to take on something that, as CFO Fox has said, she's not really sure how big it's gonna be. That's all. So if we can have that commitment, then you want to bring it back to finance for more discussion, I'm good with that too. I just don't want to talk about it today.
Did somebody move that recommendation, Madam Chair?
Director Bass did move
Yeah, I'll
the,
withdraw mine and you can go with that.
so could you repeat your?
So did somebody move that recommendation? I am? Okay, I'll move that recommendation.
We did have a recommendation on the floor. Yes, we did.
But I withdrew it.
Pardon me?
I withdrew mine.
You withdrew? All right. So we now have a motion. Could you please read that out, Director Stamer, just so we're all clear what we're talking
I
about?
think we're just gonna move the recommendation that the committee recommend the board staff to develop a TNRD surplus and reserve policy, and finance will be able to discuss that at our next committee meeting.
All right. Thank you. Alternate Director Beppel, any discussion? On the question, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Action requested, Fraser Basin Council Shuswap flood mapping. We do have a request to the Board of Directors for use to support staff, TNRD staff to engage with Fraser Basin Council and NHC on Shuswap Lake Region floodplain mapping project. This has been ongoing for several years now. Staff have helped in the past. So I would like to move that the TNRD Board of Directors support TNRD staff to engage with Fraser Basin Council and NHC on the Shuswap Lake Region floodplain mapping project. Director Ranta, thank you very much. Discussion? On the question, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. We have information only from Shuswap Watershed Council and the Rabbits BC Association. Okay, we don't actually have to do that unless anyone wants to talk or take action on them. We can simply note them and move on. New business, do we have any items for new business? Okay, lots of hands. All right. Hang on just a sec. Could I get those hands back up again, people? You were too quick. I've got Director Stamer, I've got alternate Director Beppel, I've got Director Hayward and Director Grenier. Director Stamer.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just quickly, thanks to staff on behalf of myself and Director Hayward on the preliminary work on the streetlights in Lewis Creek. I don't know if Director Hayward wants to speak to that or not, but it's a work in motion. So thanks for that. And also this letter from the Lower North Thompson Valley. It looks like they're on a fairly tight timeline, but I believe what would be the process in this? If this is a late item, can we act on this or do we have to wait till the next meeting?
My understanding, Corporate Officer Lois, is that we can act on it under new business if it does not require major discussion or significant staff time.
Well, I would hope that it doesn't take a lot of discussion. It's something that's been important to the Lower North Thompson Valley, and it seems like we have the support, and we'll find that out from our area directors. And I'll move that we send a letter of support in regards to the request from the Lower North Thompson Valley Tourism Society.
Okay, thank you. Second by Director Sarai, discussion. All those in favor, opposed if any, that's carried. Thank you. Alternate Director Beppel.
Thanks. And report is in your blue folder, just to speak about the FCM advocacy days that I attended. The main point is that FCM, on behalf of local governments across Canada, is looking for a new fiscal framework with the federal government, especially to address the infrastructure deficit that all local governments are facing. And then the second is that I was asked by the provincial government to sit on the Disaster and Climate Risk and Resilience Assessment Committee's Subcommittee for Economy. So I will be happy to report back in the future if I have the pleasure to be here. But I want to thank especially Director Grenier, Director Morse, Director Rainier, who gave me some information for FCM advocacy days. I really appreciate that. So that's the rest of the report you can read in your folder. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Director Hayward.
What am I talking about?
I don't know. I thought you put your hand up for new business.
I did, but I think.
Oh, so it was all with
Did it.
Director Stamers already addressed
He
it?
got me, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Director Grenier.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to report to board members that BC Assessment has got back to me on incorrect assessments. We had an assessment that was a property in Cherry Creek that was listed in barrier, and that caused some concern about taxation and taxation collection. BC Assessments corrected that and invites anybody that has an incorrect assessment to send it off to them for correction. I think that'll give some comfort to some of our people who are thinking that their taxes might be going in the wrong direction. The second thing is that they identified a property that that I happen to know for 25 years was not listed in e-value. They actually registered it in e-value. And I forwarded the information to CAO Hildebrand so that next spring, when we start to get questions about assessment, perhaps the combined efforts of our staff and maybe Colton even to let people know that there's a process now available to correct mistakes on the BC Assessment addressing. Thank you.
Any other items of new business?
If there's any refunds, they could come address to the district of barrier.
And I understand, Director Thorpe, you have a notice of motion.
Thank you, Chair. Mayor, Director Gatz and I have been having a couple of discussions. So I would like to make a notice of motion. Whereas we have seen a significant increase in the number of properties within our region negatively impacted by the flood events, and the changing landscape and waterways can potentially increase the risk of flooding. And whereas the City of Merritt, a TNRD member municipality, has suffered devastating flooding and is responding with flood mitigation plan, which could change the water behavior downstream of the city. And whereas the TNRD has identified emergency planning and response as a key priority in our strategic planning. Therefore, be it resolved that the board instructs staff to prepare a report on potential impacts of the Merritt Flood Mitigation Plan to properties downstream and the potential need for a TNRD flood mitigation plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that will be returning to us at a future meeting. Are there any questions? All right, we have need of a closed meeting. If someone would like to make that motion. Director Bass, thank you. Seconded by Director Getz. All those in favor?
Chair, forgive me. So it's specifically, this would be closing the meeting under section 91C of the Community Charter.
Labor relations or other employee relations. Thank you very much. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried, and we will move straight into closed meeting.